PBIS RTI Center here in Wisconsin. And Kent, first of all, we're kind of focusing this segment on writing someone up. What is the reason for writing someone up?
Okay, so when we talk about writing somebody up, what we are looking at is just basically documenting the fact that either a major behavior incident happened, so a big thing like weapons, harassment, drugs, something like that, or that reteaching had to happen. So writing somebody up is documentation, and it documents either that a major behavior happened or that the teacher had to engage in active reteaching and correction with the student. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So writing
So,
somebody up,
what about the minor behaviors?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What about minor behaviors?
Minor behaviors are going to be the same thing. With a minor behavior, we're talking about anything that's classroom managed that the teacher feels like, or the staff in general feels like, they can no longer ignore or use sort of basic classroom management practices. So if planned ignoring, if the use of proxemics, if just a simple reminder of what the expectations are don't change the student's behavior, then the teacher is going to engage in the reteaching process, and then we'll document that as a minor. With either of these, the writing somebody up, either a major or a minor, is just collecting that data. It's not a way of changing the behavior. The interaction between the teacher and student is how the behavior changes.
I think one of the concerns that come from staff members here in our building, but across the district, what about parent contact, especially on minor behaviors? Should parents be contacted? I think some feel that anytime a student would, for so-called, be written up, a parent should know about that. What are your thoughts?
That's going to be a building call and a district call. From my standpoint, no. You know, Students learn behavior the way they learn academic content. And it's completely normal for any student to have a behavior error, right? Where the teacher needs to engage the student and just sort of do a simple reteaching like they do with reading and math. There are buildings that will choose to do that. But if you think about what we're trying to do, the more we contact a parent and the more we say to the parent, oh, your kid screwed up or your kid had a mistake, the easier it is for the parent to perceive that the school is targeting their child or that teacher is targeting their child. So as long as you're telling the parents up front that you're going to notify them when a pattern emerges or when significant behavior occurs, that's okay. We don't need to notify them every single time. When a pattern starts emerging, that's another story.
Okay. The difference between writing up, say, a second grader and a fifth grader, I think because a fifth grader, really, they've been part of our programming here at Sand Lake Proud for about 4 to 5 years. Shouldn't our expectations be a little bit higher for them than, say, second graders?
Um, Developmentally, yeah, our expectations are going to be different, but we are still responsible for teaching the fluency at the beginning of the year. So while the expectations are the same, first grade through, fifth grade, be responsible, respectful, or whatever your expectations are, how those look in a classroom or how those look at a grade level are going to change. They become more developmentally appropriate. So yeah, we do still need to teach to fluency what those expectations are at the start of the year, and then hold the students accountable. How soon students reach fluency is going to be different. So for a little kid, they need more repetition, they need more instruction, they need more practice to reach fluency than a fifth grader does. But we still have to teach what we expect at that developmental level to begin with. Does that make sense?
I think so. It does. I think another question for you then, how does our behavior flow chart, we have a behavior flow chart, we have a consequences menu, and referrals, how do all those work together? What would be the ideal situation for that?
The behavior flow chart is essentially sort of a graphic organizer for your staff, for subs, for volunteers, for whoever that says, if this big behavior happens, this is how we proceed. If small classroom behaviors occur, minors, this is how we proceed. The consequence menu, the office discipline referral, all of that are going to be components on that flowchart. So the flowchart is going to show whoever is looking at it and using it what constitutes a minor, when the first minor, second minor, third minor happen, how that correction menu or the consequence menu is utilized, and what type of referral is documented. That it was either that major contact or a minor contact, and essentially what the behavior was and how the teacher intervened or staff intervened with it, what consequence was applied, those kinds of things.
Okay. In regards to reteaching and or just teaching expectations, there has been some concern expressed about showing kids the wrong way and then the correct behavior. And in that, some are feeling that giving them or showing them the unexpected behavior is maybe giving kids ideas of things or how to do things wrong. What should we keep in mind when we're teaching or reteaching students?
So the whole idea about showing students the wrong behavior, what we're trying to show is the behavior approximation, right? That what we're teaching you is ideal, and these other things are not quite there. So it's a way for students to kind of monitor their own, monitor themselves and their own implementation of the expected behavior. Certainly with young children, we don't want to show them the inappropriate behavior being demonstrated by their peers, because that is what they're going to remember. But having a staff show behavioral approximation, like this is not it, or this is kind of it, but not what we're looking for, is a valuable and necessary teaching tool. So the difference is going to be who's showing it and how the student understands the purpose for it being shown.
Okay. So in all, in our whole discussion here today about writing students up, kind of the big takeaway of that is it's really a documentation of some reteaching that has happened, correct?
Correct. So a good way to think about this is a teacher who is really significantly frustrated with the student, may be, talking to the principal, maybe sitting in the teacher's lounge talking to colleagues and saying, I've had to write this kid up, I've had to make, 25 referrals on this student and nothing is changing. Right. The office discipline referral, the minor tracking form is not going to change the behavior. The interaction with the student is how the behavior is going to be retaught and be able to be modified. If we're actually doing that 25 times and the behavior doesn't change, that's saying that there is something going on with the student's behavior. But the fact that we're documenting just for the sake of documenting without having that interaction essentially just becomes a frequency count on the number of times Timmy was naughty rather than trying to reteach and modify. Make sense?
Very good. Ken Smith with the RTI Center here in Wisconsin, thanks so much for spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you. Have a good day.